His name is Craig Foster. I'm sure many of you already know Craig because you've been to Job Seekers Network and their excellent program there. He has been the founder and the executive director of Job Seekers Network. How long have you guys been around?
8.5 years.
8.5 years. Oh my gosh. And before that, from up until 2008, he was in executive management at Dell in the finance area for 11 years. But with the recession, I don't know if that put you out of a job or not, but he saw too many people out of work and decided to go ahead and help other people try to find employment. He's been coaching people for 25 years, and his volunteerism has led him on many boards: Austin Bridge Builders Alliance, ADBA, Austin Disaster Relief Network. They are in your neighborhood anytime a major event happens, a fire, a flood, anything like that. They're just an incredible organization. And he's also been on the board of the Hill Country Bible Church of Austin. He has his BBA and his MBA from the University of Texas. And his wife, Debbie, and he are very thrilled about their little new 7-month-old grandchild. Today, Craig is going to speak to you about tools and strategies for your job search, and he's calling it the advantages of the proactive and focused job search. So, ladies and gentlemen, I definitely am very thrilled to invite Craig Foster up to our table. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, Shannon, I'm humbled to be here. If somebody told me I'd be speaking to Launchpad Job Club, 15 years ago, I said I don't know what would bring that about, but here I am. So excited to be here. I've been helping job seekers since I was actually a job club leader in Dallas in the early 90s. And again, early 2000s. But there's one question that stumps. There's one question that paralyzes job seekers over that period of time that I've always heard. And it's not a new question. It's a question that you get when you go maybe out to eat or when you go shopping. People ask you this question. Obviously here in this kind of a networking environment, they ask you this question. It's a question that's been asked for 2,000 years. Jesus was asked this question, and the question is, what are you seeking? What are you seeking? And that question stumps more people in the job search than any other question. It stumps more people in life than any other question. So it's very important that you get ahead of the curve on understanding what are you seeking. And you know whether or not you're clear. Because when you start working on your resume, your elevator pitch, and it's just not quite coming together, you know that you need to work on this. So this is what we're going to talk about today is kind of the answer to that question, as well as how to do a proactive and focused job search and the advantages of doing that. So we're going to cover, there's lots of choices along the way as you're trying to get clear. And, how are you designed? Do you want to work for yourself or work for a company? What kind of company culture you want to work for? What's the community? Are you going to go for kind of the ideal job or kind of a plan B job? And are you going to do it alone? Are you going to do it with others? And I applaud y'all for coming here. That says that you're going to do it with others. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those and then what it looks like to make a good decision. So some of the choices that you have as a job seeker, just right off the bat, are listed there to the left. But I want us to also think about what are the consequences of those, how you answer those, and make sure that you understand. Obviously, you look at pros and cons. That's natural. But are you always looking at the effect on you and others, and looking at the short term versus long term? One of the first things is spending time online versus networking. And obviously 80% of jobs are gotten through networking, but yet personality differences in this room would indicate I'm much more comfortable at home doing online job search. But that has an impact on how quickly you're going to find a job. Is that job going to be a good fit for you? And so you need to think through and see what kind of barriers you need to go through to be able to get to a point where you're networking and not doing stuff online. Are you going to get more skills training, more certification? Michael Brown is a partner of ours as well. And so just exploring, do I need more skills to move forward with what I want? Do I need that certification to move forward? What's the pros and cons? What's the effect on my career? And just thinking through that. And then taking a bad fit job. Our mantra at Job Seekers Network is to help you find a better fitting job faster. And a better fitting job is one that matches your God-given personality, interest, skills, interest, passion, purpose, and just really understanding what that is to its fullest extent and find a job that fit that. And we'll talk more about that. Are you going to expand your search? Geographically is one way you can expand. I had one of my best friends was a PhD chemist. Well, you can imagine there's only like 5 jobs in Austin for a PhD chemist. So he had to expand geographically and look at geographically. I had another friend in the neighborhood who actually went up to the Temple Killeen area and got a job up there because he figured it would take him about as much time to commute up to Killeen from where he was as it was to go downtown with all the traffic. And so, have you really thought through, do I need to expand my job search? Because if you got to have at least 30 companies, target companies that hire people like you to feel like that you have a good shot at getting a job. So geographically is one. Obviously, job function is another. Can you move? Should you move? Consider a different job function to move into, and just thinking about that as well. And then obviously the high dollar, low dollar. Do you go after? Do you go ahead and accept that low dollar job that's a good fit for you, or do you take that high dollar job that's going to kind of ruin your work-life balance that you desire? So those are all trade-offs that affect you, and it's very important to obviously think through that because everybody's situation is personal and different. We invite you to kind of bring other people along with that as a kind of a board of advisors, and we'll talk about that to help you understand kind of the pros and cons of all these choices and seeing what you can do. But the most important thing about getting clear about what you're seeking is obviously to get to know yourself, and I'll get in that in just a little bit. Because obviously, over my 20 years helping job seekers, I've just seen a lot of job seekers who try the same thing over and over, and it just doesn't work out that they get the result they're looking for. And so you have to try something new. So that's what that list was kind of all about. Are you trying something different? Are you doing the same thing over and over again? And that, obviously that definition of insanity. I was watching a movie and it showed, a golfer in a high sand trap, and he hit the ball into the side wall of the sand trap like 3 or 4 times, but before he got it out on a sideways way of doing it. So think about where you're at in your job search and kind of assess, do I need to get more clear about what I'm seeking? Is that part of the problem? And do I need to expand that in any way at all? So determining your destination, where do you want to go? Being unclear is certainly the first thing that I want to talk about. And think about your networking nodes. I'm going to kind of use an analogy of your networking node and a taxi driver. If you were to get into a taxi cab into a city you don't know, and tell them, and the first thing he says is, "Where are you going?" Right? What are you seeking? Where are you going? And so, if your answer to that is any bit of unclear, like Well, I don't know where I want to go. Just take me anywhere. I'll go anywhere. What kind of answer is that? And so some of y'all are giving that answer to your networking node, and that you're expecting to take you to their network, and they're going to be less likely to take you to their network if you're not crystal clear about what you're seeking and where you're headed as well. This was a name tag from our big event, and I recommend. I went to the Employment Expo last year. It's a great event. Everybody needs to make sure that you mark that Saturday on your calendar to go. This was our big event that we had, and this is one of the name tags. And this one was interesting because all those dots. What we did is we said if you are if you're finance, you're a green dot, for money. And yellow was administration, orange was marketing, red was sales, and purple was project management. And so is this person clear? And this person actually added at the bottom, sales, marketing, admin, finance, even though we had a bunch of signs on what those colored dots meant. But this person was obviously not clear. And so when they walked up to a table to a recruiter, what do you think that recruiter was thinking? Yeah, that recruiter was probably thinking that this was a very unclear person. And so when they're unclear, it's like, I'm unclear how I'm going to help you. So that's pretty critical that you get unclear. The other ones on there for you to look at are uninvolved is one. Uninvolved says, I don't care. Uninvolved is where you're not really spending much time on your job search. There was a survey done about how many hours job seekers spend on their job search. Someone take a guess as to how many hours on average a week that you spend on your job search. 20? 15? 5. I've seen 2 surveys. One said 5 and one said 11. So it just seems like all the distractions of life, cleaning out that closet, that drawer, whatever, just kind of gets you distracted. And so I applaud you if you're spending 20, 25 hours a week. We ask that on our registration form. We ask you how many hours a week do you plan, how involved do you expect to be in your job search? And so we ask that not because we want to know, we ask that because it forces you to think about how many hours are you spending, and are you spending enough hours in your job search. So obviously being involved, being active in your job search, treating it as a job is a choice that you're making, and a very critical choice that you make as well. Another one is undecided, and the undecided job seeker is kind of trying to pick between 2 things. You may be picking between an IT consultant and IT manager, and those are kind of different. An IT consultant is individual contributor, and maybe a contractor, and IT manager is more, managing people and so forth. So even that level of certainty would you're narrowed it down to 2, may not be enough. Obviously, the more divided you are in your job search, the less traction you're going to make on either one, right? So, just think of it, just kind of the momentum that you can build if you've got one effort going after, one thing and getting it narrowed down to one exact thing. And then undecided is another one, where you just haven't maybe decided. On the unfocused, I view it as kind of saying, where are you going on vacation? Well, I'm going out west. Well, out west could be Arizona, Grand Canyon, it could be San Francisco, it could be Hawaii. But some of y'all do that. When you say, what are you looking for? And you say, I'm looking for sales. Well, sales is very broad, right? You've got inside sales, outside sales, you've got software sales, hardware sales, software service sales, you've got just lots of different types of sales. And so when you're with your network, you need to be clear. I had a coach that was helping me for a long time, and he always said, I'm in medical device sales. And being the proudful person, I didn't want to say to him, I don't know what really a medical device is. And so it took me like 6 weeks to get the courage to ask him, when you say medical device, what do you mean? Because medical devices is a broad range from like vitamin D test kits for hospitals to like artificial arms and legs. And so I finally got the nerve to ask him, and he said, well, I'm into artificial arms and legs. That's the kind of sales that I'm used to doing. And when he said that, I immediately remembered that the father of one of the players on my my daughter's volleyball team had started a company in artificial arms and legs. And so it's only until you give people kind of that specific hook does it register click in their mind, that connection that they may have with somebody. It wasn't until he said artificial arms and legs that I really got it. Okay? So that's why being so clear helps, is because you're telling your network, you're telling that taxi driver exactly where you're going. Okay? You're focused on one thing. I'm going to the Renaissance Hotel on Great Hills Drive in the Arboretum at this address. Okay, the taxi driver knows exactly where to go. If you get that specific with your networking, people, they can get that much more helpful to you to take you where you want to go, and they will help you even more. Because I've got lots of job seekers over the years who have, kind of wanted to help. In fact, this 2 weeks ago, I had somebody want to submit to kind of an insider that I know at a company, and I've got an insider at Main Street Hub. And so if you're looking for a job there, you can send me a resume before you apply online, and I can get you hooked up. But he sent in for a community manager position, and he's a tech guy. And that was the one I didn't filter. I didn't look at it. And my Main Street Hub guy sends me a note back, says, I don't think this person is applying for the right job. He had not even tailored his resume. He wasn't even qualified for that position. And he was just kind of doing the shotgun approach and just applying to everything. And it kind of hurt, our relationship a little bit. I kind of like, I need to get you focused, and get you to the right place. But I kind of blew that, right? I was a network for him, and he didn't use me wisely. And so that's very important that you really get that done. Getting focused, just avoids you chasing after chickens. My wife and I used to own some chickens, and so I know what it's like to chase chickens. And so when you're focused, you kind of just avoid looking everything at every job, at every avenue, and you're really focused on where you want to go, what you want to do. You put your 100% resources, and it really simplifies your message. It really simplified. There's no more unclarity around when you're trying to do your elevator pitch. So on your handout there that you've got, I want you to pick a couple of things on there. I want you to check which one of those. Put a little check mark by the one that you think you are, whether you think you're unclear, unfocused, undecided, or focused. And then also on the passive, are you going to be passive, or you're going to be proactive in your job search? So just check that, and then put a star where you want to be. Put a star where you want to be. Obviously, focus is where we want you to be. So getting focused, let's look at what that looks like. We believe that you are uniquely made. There's no one else with your gifting, your motivations, your purpose, your interests, your passion. You are uniquely made. And so you are a masterpiece, in fact. And there's no one else like you. And what do people do with the masterpiece? They don't hide it in a closet. They put it up for everybody to see. They let a museum. We have a museum lady here. They put it in a museum so thousands of people can see it. They put a light on it. They preserve it, and they advertise it, right? So each one of y'all is a masterpiece, and so you need to think of yourself that way, because that's how God made you. So getting focused. This is what we use. This is what we call the career planning diagram or kind of process. And a lot of times our job seekers will come in at that level of number 4 on the job search, where they're wanting to work on their branding, their elevator pitch, resumes, LinkedIn, networking, interviews, to lead them to a job. And what they've done is they've skipped the first 3 steps of the career planning pyramid. And those are so important to think about, building a firm foundation of understanding what is your personality, what is your interest, what are your values, what are your skills and knowledge, your passions, and then taking that step on career exploration, where you're doing those informational interviews that they talk about here at Launchpad. And maybe you do some job training. Maybe you do volunteer. I had a lady who actually volunteered into a position. 2 ladies actually who volunteered into a position. One was at a horse, one of those horse therapy places up in Leander, and she was a volunteer, and she did such a great job. They asked her to be executive director when the new one came along. So you never know where that's going to lead to. And then obviously you may pick the entrepreneurial path. And then there's obviously some decision making going on. So if you're jumping in at that job search level, level number 4, and you're kind of not having a lot of success, you might want to really think about, have I really been clear on the foundation of who I am and where I'm headed? Obviously, the other part to think about is your whole life purpose and life calling. We have a workshop on that we're right in the middle of, where we look at what is your life purpose? What is my mission in life? Not just my work, but my life. And then your work fits into that. It's only one element of what's called the life calling wheel, where you think about your relationships, your finances, your health, your family, your spiritual life, your fitness life, and just all areas of life, and make sure that you're well balanced in what you're doing, because that's the kind of job that I know that you probably want as well. So those are all the things that you need to get focused on, and values is one of those. So I wanted to bring this one up because this has caused a lot of frustration for job seekers that I've worked with, where they come out of a job that was very hard on them, frankly, and they got let go in a very rough way. And they're looking back, they're saying, I just want out of that industry, I just want to go out of that position, I want to go do something different. And when you drill down into it, it was really a bad boss, and you and the boss, or you and the company culture, the values of what the company valued were not the same as what you value, and therefore it was a mixed match. So you don't need necessarily change industries, you need to change companies. And so when you're coming from a place of hurt, though, it's kind of sometimes hard to work through that. But your values are very important. They define who you are. They supply meaning to your life and to your work. And obviously they influence your decisions. So I did want to spend a minute on values here because I think it's so important to look at that. So I want you to look at this list. This is an abbreviated list. I want you to look at this list, and I want you to pick out 2 or 3 values that are important to you, and we'll talk about it. So just take a few minutes, and then think about what the impact is on your job search. Okay, what did you come up with? Somebody tell me one of their top 3 values. Somebody.
Respect for others.
Okay, respect for others. And what?
And education.
Yeah. So that impacts your job search, doesn't it? Absolutely. And for those two, you need to think about what kind of questions would I ask in the interview to get to what do they share the same values for respect for others and education. And think about what that looks like. Because they're trying to do the same thing for you. They're called, behavior-based interview. Give me the example of a time when you had a conflict and how did you resolve it? Well, you may say, give me an example of a time when somebody was really struggling at a job, and what kind of activities did you do, education or whatever, to help that person? Or what are you trying to do to educate the public in? Or ask yourself, what is this company trying to do as far as education? Okay, somebody else. Give me your top 1 or 2 values. Yes.
Respect. I've worked for a couple companies lately that weren't always respectful of their workforce, and so I
Yes.
think that's a hot button for me. I treat people with respect, and I expect the same in return. And when I work for a big company that doesn't do that, that makes me want that even more.
Yes. Good, yes.
Balance is really important to me, not only like work-life balance, but like in a job, like have your tasks.
A variety of tasks, balance of different things.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So see how this short time here, just focused on values, can lead you to some interview questions that lead you to understand maybe, Glassdoor, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, but are you seeing some things on Glassdoor that goes against the values that you have? And like Main Street Hub, this guy is a pretty new manager. He's pretty exciting. He's late 20s. So he's excited to be a manager. But man, he knows the company values. He knows, and that's why he went to work for that company, is because he shares the values of Main Street Hub. And so it's important. You're going to be more engaged, more involved, more focused in your job if your values align with the values of the company. So just keep that in mind. Your competitive design. Like I said, every one of y'all is a masterpiece. You're unique, and you need to view that as your competitive advantage, and you need to understand how you articulate that uniqueness. Please don't be that generic job seeker that goes to the internet and gets the answers to all the interview questions and just repeats them out there in the interview, and your uniqueness, your authenticity does not come through in the interview. That's one thing I asked a recruiter one time. It may have been somebody at Peak Performers who's here this morning. They said the one thing I look for is authenticity of who that person is, and that person being vulnerable about who they are, and that matters a lot in the interview process, because if you're that generic job seeker, you're not going to get hired. And if they aren't going to hire the authentic you, then you don't want to work for the company. So there's no disadvantage to being authentic. But it may take a little bit longer, but you're going to be in that company longer if they know who they're getting and you know that you're a good fit for who you are. Because, as far as market differentiation goes, this was a famous, anybody know what that is over there to the left?
Quarter.
It's a Susan B. Anthony dollar.
Put it in a coffee
Well, back when
machine,
those
it's a
were
quarter.
popular, people were going in and getting change, and give me change for $1. And because they were so similar to the quarter, they'd walk out with 2 Susan B. Anthony's and two quarters, and they'd go back in, give me some more change. And so that's what happens with you as well, where you need to make sure that the companies understand what your competitive, what your market differentiation is. Okay? And you can only do that if you understand all those things about who you are: interests, skills, values, passion, purpose. And that's critical for market differentiation. Well, let me move on to kind of employment choice. We're talking about some of the choices and some of how to be proactive here. And this is a little schedule I ran across that I love. These percentages are maybe a little bit old, but I think they may still hold true to a certain extent. This shows that as far as people looking for new positions, new jobs, new opportunities, that most of y'all, 60%, will continue what you're doing where you're working for another company. You're continuing kind of in the same industry, but you're going to pick a new position in another company. And so that's kind of the comfort zone. That's the low risk part of what you're doing. Over to the right, the new career, 20% of y'all will be looking to make a change. You're still going to work for somebody, a company, but you're going to change careers. I did that within Dell. I moved from finance over to program management. And obviously it's easier to do it when you get your foot in the door. And that's actually what my son's considering. He's not exactly excited about some of the openings over at a company he's got targeted, but he loves the company, he believes in the culture of the company, and he wants to get his foot in the door knowing he can probably move to another position later on within the company. And so it's important to think through that. But when you're making that move, you need to convince somebody that you're making, to make an investment in you. The other things to consider is to work for yourself, and that's the top rung. And obviously the risks go up as you get kind of move up there on that scale and then over. And so working for yourself, starting a new business would be an endeavor that 15% of y'all take hold of. And we partner with a franchise consultant who I would consider a marketing consultant. Actually, not this coming Monday, but the following Monday, he's coming in and he's going to do a workshop. It's on the back of your flyer, and we'll go over that in just a minute, all the information on the back of that flyer. But doing that, considering that, and because, obviously one of the things about that is you actually get to get some equity. If you got your own business, you're working for yourself, you're building equity. And I know money's important to some of y'all, Michael and I were talking about this, Michael Brown and I were talking about this, about, how do you make a small fortune in business? And we both decided that the best way to make a small fortune in business is to start with a large fortune and will it down till you got a small fortune. So, not the best way. That's a joke. But you can build equity when you go into business. And then obviously new venture is similar to a new business, but it's a change of what you've been doing, and you don't have the expertise maybe because you're making a change in careers. But 5% of people will do that. We had a guy buy. He'd always loved food. He was kind of a foodie, and those people. And so he went and bought a catering franchise. And he's just right in the middle of building out his little store, and he's just loving the fact that he's going to be able to be a foodie as part of his career and building equity. And so those things are always kind of important to look at when you're making choices on your career. The environment choice is the other factor that you need to consider. And first of all, go ahead and on your schedule, on your handout here, go ahead and mark kind of which one you're considering, just so you kind of are clear which one of those 4 quadrants you're considering there. So the environment choice is pretty important as well. Over to the left, the focal point. The focal point is all about kind of the position and industry you're looking for. If you think about that little crosshairs there under focal point, do you want to be a financial analyst in healthcare? Do you want to be a program manager in a software company? Do you want to be a programmer at a gaming company? And so those are the choices there. Obviously, we talked about value, but along with value, that's the company culture, but also boss. Shannon and I probably agree that your boss is probably the number one determiner of your satisfaction on the job. And so just to understand that in the interview process, you want to make sure that you're understanding what is the boss's managerial style, decision-making style, how involved are they going to be in your decision-making. I made the mistake of being kind of really a micromanager to an extent in one situation, and it almost cost me an employee. And so just think about whether your boss, and then what kind of boss you want to be, because that's a choice that you're making, is what kind of boss you're going to go to work for. And that's part of the values. You said respect. That's part of the values there that you look for. And so that helps you prep for your interview process. Compensation, obviously, there's a broad range there. When you're unemployed, the longer you're unemployed, it kind of feels like, gosh, can I still ask for what I was making before? And then you need to consider cost of living if you're moving. I had a friend move to Ada, Oklahoma, and everything said that Ada, Oklahoma was going to be cheaper. He got there, and it was not that much cheaper. And he was just shocked and surprised by that. But what looks like a good offer in another city may not be a great offer because of the cost of living there. And then community obviously is important. Again, that's where values comes in. What's the community I'm going to live in, work in? Working in Georgetown, going to work for the city of Georgetown, going to be different than going to work for the city of Austin. It's going to be different than Liberty Hill. It's just, just all those factors are different. And so, you may live in Round Rock but had really never considered going to work in Taylor. I talked to a lady who moved her company from California to Taylor, Texas. And she chose it because of the culture of that small town environment. And she thinks she can draw working families, working people up there who really value that same culture. And so, those are just things kind of open your eyes when you're trying to look at the choices that you're trying to make there. As far as company culture goes, I had an article on 14 ways to research company culture. Ask for a walkthrough of the facility. If they don't ever bring you in, behind the front conference room, then you may be missing out. Are people smiling? Are they laughing? Are they getting their work done? Do they have the proper equipment on their desk? Just seeing what that environment looks like. Obviously, we talked about Glassdoor being kind of a grain of salt. You have to look through that. Find out what sorts of events the companies hold for employees. What kind of performance review process do they have? What's the overall mission? What's the culture? What's the reimbursement for education, for training, for seminars, college tuition? And that'll tell you a little bit about what their values are as well. So that one was called 14 Ways to Research Company Culture. And those are all important questions and interviews in the interview to take. This is one of my favorite slides because we know that everybody can't get an ideal job, and that's the one over in Plan A. Plan A would be one that is along your career track. It brings you already know that it brings you a lot of fulfillment. You know that in that environment you're going to be striving, you're going to be thriving, and you're going to be able to make a life, not just a living. Plan B is, it may be on the same job track, but it's not quite in that career. It's not taking that career step up, but you're doing it primarily because of finance maybe running out. And that's the biggest determiner is, I'm kind of running out of money. I have to take a Plan B job. And I'm taking a survival job, surviving. And you're just making a living. And that's okay. We tell job seekers. I had a job seeker come to me and say, I'm not sure, I think my Plan A, my ideal job that I'm looking for, I talked to this company and they're hopeful to open this position in 3 months. And Craig, should I wait for that to come up? So, I had to ask him some more questions. So I asked him, I said, can I get personal with you? He said, sure. I said, well, how are your finances doing? And he said, well, I'm 3 months behind on my mortgage, and I'm afraid, next month I'm going to get that foreclosure. And I said, well, there's no doubt, there's no question to me what you should do. You should go get that survival job. You should go get that Plan B job, and make sure you're providing for your family first and foremost, because that hopefully is a value of yours to take care of family. and provide a roof. So he said, yeah, thank you. I just kind of lost sight of that. Yes, sir.
Eric, can you revisit focus in the context of Plan B?
Well, focus would be hopefully Plan B. You could get a stepping stone job that will prepare you for a Plan A. That would be the ideal Plan B job. Would be you're still focused on kind of the longer term, and this would be a stepping stone to get there. And hopefully it's not just a survival job that's kind of totally outside the realm. We had for instance, I'll give you a good example. We had an IT guy come, and he went through our career direction workshop called Design and Focus, which will be starting September 18th. And he was just miserable in IT. And he went through our program. He went through all the interests, all those assessments we do, personality and so forth. And he said, he kind of said, you know what, based on this, I should really go back to my earlier passion, and that was to be a school teacher. And but to be a school teacher, I know I need to get some certification, some training. And so he took a Plan B job for an educational institution as an IT guy. And so he was kind of in that education environment, but he was still doing a little bit of IT work because that's what he was skilled in. And so he just didn't take any survival job, but he took a lower paying job, but it was a stepping stone. It took him in the same kind of path until he could get his certification. And by the way, just for all y'all who are thinking about changing careers, I talked to him. He said the worst day I had as a school teacher, which school teacher days can get pretty bad. He said it's far better than any day I ever had in the IT world. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Well, I understood kind of focus to be pretty specific on one thing.
Yeah.
And I get being specific in your description about kind of who you are, what
Right.
you're sure about.
Yeah.
But it seems like to me that you're limiting your options if you veer towards the undecided by being available for more than one thing. Even a job description sometimes is a really pie in the sky description of a lot of different things. And it seems like if you get really narrowly focused, you're limiting your options a little bit. I mean, there seems to be a little bit of a middle ground there, especially when you go kind of away from the
I mean, in my mind, there's not middle ground in what you just described as far as getting clear, and that is part of the thing is, yet you don't want to leave your options open for a period of time. Don't get me wrong. We know that not everybody can get their ideal job this time around, and you need to give yourself like a deadline, and that's what we say is go for the ideal job until your finances say you can, before they run out, obviously, and then switch over to Plan B. But I still think that the idea, and that may be a personality thing of kind of keeping, that is a personality trait to kind of you want to keep the possibilities and the options open. But I still think that when you're keeping that, depending on how far you keep that open, it can really, again, be a shotgun approach to a job search where you just kind of, you could go after, a lot of different careers, a lot of different industries instead of kind of focused on at least a position, career or so forth. So I love this, and it's just something to think about as far as your decision making on where you're going in your job search. So here's I don't need to belabor this. These are some of the choices that I made along the way. The first column are kind of my choices I made. And then, has anybody watched Forrest Gump, that middle column? Yeah, okay, you get the joke then. It happens. And then some volunteer stuff. I was the guy that, I was volunteering at a job club in the early 90s, and now it's my career for the last 8.5 years. And so I actually turned it into, as a volunteer, and then I turned it to a nonprofit similar to Launchpad, and then now it's my full-time gig. It's my full-time job. That's what I get paid out of the nonprofit, and support your local nonprofit, Launchpad Job Club, because it's hard work, and so, you want to give back to people that are helping you. So recommend that you give back to Launchpad. And then obviously I took some training along the way when I decided to kind of go kind of more towards the nonprofit area. But that's kind of my background of where I got moved around. Companies got sold. I had to make some decisions. And so I would encourage you, and I think I have some, number 6 there, I've got some areas there that you can kind of pick, kind of draw out. It's kind of good to look at your career at a higher level, maybe to get some focus on where you want to go, what that looks like. Maybe there is something that you can do similar to what I did. Because making choices are pretty hard, right? And we don't want you to do it alone. It's not to your advantage to do it alone. Actually, when I made a choice to go into Job Seekers Network, I had a board of advisors that I met with. I had 3 people that knew me well and that were kind of discerning in those areas. And I had done research on 3 different career paths: job search coach, kind of job club leader, nonprofit leader, and then something else I forgot already. And I kind of went through about 15 minutes each describing what I think that looked like, what the business model might look like. And at the end of those 45 minutes, I asked for feedback, and they all said, "Craig, when you talked about Job Club, man, your eyes lit up, your body language, everything about you said that's what you should pursue." So you may have a board of advisors that you need to go to and say, "Hey, I need help getting clear. I need help focusing on what." So let me give you some ideas and you feedback. Maybe that's somebody that's a prayer partner or your close friends or even a career coach that would sit down and kind of help you get clear on that, because that's important to not do it alone, because there's a lot of pressure to make kind of the right decision. A lot of us struggle with perfection. And, I ran across an article about perfection. There's obviously no such thing as a perfect decision. Perfection is an illusion. And there's lots of good choices out there. And so don't get me wrong, there's when you get focused, there's still some options in there between different positions, different industries that you could go to. But I know a lot of y'all are doing this where you're faced with kind of moving from a comfort zone over kind of doubts and fears. Those are no strangers to us in the job search. Franklin Roosevelt said, "The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today." And another one says, William Shakespeare said, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we ought to might win by fearing to attempt." So we ask you to take that leap of faith, to think about what that plan A might be, what that good fit for you might be, and see what that looks like for you as well. So we've talked a lot today about future focus and what all the decisions are, and I wanted to leave some time for questions. Before I do that, I'd just like to invite you to turn to the back of your sheet of paper and make sure you know about Job Seekers Network. We meet on Monday mornings up in Northwest Austin from 9 to 11:30. We have a keynote speaker similar to this, and then the second hour is all about training, small group training on resumes, interviewing, LinkedIn, elevator pitch, networking, branding, and so forth. And we have workshops on that design and focus. That second one there is career direction, confidence workshop, and that starts September 18th and runs for 4 Mondays from 10:30 to 2. And then some of y'all are considering franchise ownership. And there's a webinar a week from today at 1:30 to 2:30. Or you can come hear that same presentation in person at Job Seekers Network on August 28th from 10:30 to 12 noon. And he'll be speaking that morning as well at 9. you can take this e-quiz to determine whether or not you have a risk tolerance for the risk of a small business. So those are just some opportunities. And then obviously, if you want to jumpstart your career, gain a competitive advantage, you're aware of consultingsolutions.net as well. So, and Michael Brown, who's over here. So, that design and focus is kind of the hallmark of who we are and what we're all about, and the hallmark of this talk. Because when are you going to invest in yourself? What better time to invest in yourself than right now to determine your future course, your future focus, so that in your job search you're just much more laser focused on how you should be spending your time, who you should networking with, and so forth. We had, and finally I'll end with this story. We had a job seeker who went through 16 different interviews to get one job at the same company. 16 different interviews. He said, Craig, if I'd never gone to Design and Focus and learned my personality, my interests, my values, my skills, my passion, my purpose, if I had not gone to that workshop, if I had not invested in myself to really do that deep thinking on who I am, I would have never been able to answer all those questions in that 16 interviews that I had for him. So it's a good, worthy endeavor. So with that, I wanted to close it up and open it up for questions that you might have. Yes?
So one of the things you mentioned was opening up the search scope and possibly looking at it. I would love to stay in the great state of Texas, but one of the best things that I did was move from New Jersey to Tucson when I was in the middle of a job search. I just couldn't live in New Jersey anymore.
Yeah.
So now I'm looking at it can be a little overwhelming opening up that job scope and saying, well, if Texas doesn't work, I can basically work anywhere in the country. Why not look at all jobs? I'm just concerned about, are there some steps I can take to minimize the overwhelm factor once you open up that job search? And
yeah, again, you need to kind of look at your values. Again, when my wife and I moved from Dallas to Austin, when we were in Dallas, we kind of said, we're tired of this concrete pavement. We would love to be a place that has trees and hills and mountains. And we talked about Raleigh, we talked about Nashville, and we had gone to school in Austin, and that wasn't even on that list. But then we got an opportunity with Dell and kind of looked, hey, it has what we wanted. It has trees, it has hills, hill country, but it keeps us in Austin. So do pick places that you still value, right? Don't just scatter shoot it. Yeah. Yes.
I had just had a brief consultation with a career coach.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, it sounds a lot like, do you guys more or less do the same thing? Only, it's free and
Yes. Yeah. We've been compared to some of the outplacement or career coaches. Around town, and I brag, and we both brag on our volunteers, right? We're just, when you work for a nonprofit, you're just more, you attract more compassionate coaches, and they're not just doing it for a job. Of course, we don't pay our coaches, but the lady that does the career direction workshop, she's certified in Myers-Briggs and Strong's interest inventory. She does coaching on the side, makes big bucks doing that, but she happens to work for me, but she does the workshop. So we have skill trained people, doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I just wanted, it was more or less the same, obviously, I'd rather not be.
Right. Now we do charge for our career direction workshop, but we take what the market rate is, we cut it in half, and then actually knowing that you're unemployed, we cut it in half and say you pay half now and half when you get a job. So we kind of split it up into two payments. The early bird on the career direction workshop is $99 now, and $99 when you get a job, and it's a bargain, steal of a deal. Everything else on Monday morning is free. All our interviewing, resume, branding, LinkedIn, all the keynote speakers, all that stuff's free.